I gotta wait. How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
Welcome to the share, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
I'm Dreme, a black woman with many beautiful interconnecting identities. A few I will name at this moment as we get started on this podcast journey together. A Bostonian, born and raised in the inner city, Dorchester and Roxbury neighborhoods, to a teenage single mother who has my whole heart. An educator, I've been working with youth and children since my teenage years, and formally, I have been teaching almost a decade now. That's wild to think about. An entrepreneur, I am the founder of The Chair, a black and brown centered tech platform dedicated to supporting people on their hair journey, where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a more joyous experience. I have a workable site, my prototype. It took me 2 years to build, and now I'm on this adventure that you're currently on with me. My goal for this podcast is to share stories, black stories, educator stories, entrepreneurship stories, and hair stories. I want you to leave each episode with the opportunity to gain new insight, just a glimpse into my world or the worlds that are featured on my podcasts, a little chuckle during your day or night, possibly a little anger to encourage you to advocate for justice, and hope to continue learning and dreaming. So come in and listen to the beautiful voices in the chair as they share their stories, starting with me.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Hello, beautiful people. This is Cheryl Kaiser. Cheryl Kaiser, can you please introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hello, I'm Cheryl Kaiser, and I am the Executive Director of the Institute for Social Innovation at the Blank School at Babson College.
I met Cheryl in business school when I attended. I was struggling because I felt like I wasn't being seen in business school, and then I was recommended to go to an info session at the Social Innovation Center, and that's when I met Emily. And then Emily introduced me to Cheryl. And from the first time I met Cheryl, I was like, yeah, this woman is cool. I'm excited to learn from her. And she has been an integral part of the building of the chair at the very beginning. I will always remember applying for a summer program and having to do the interview on campus, and Cheryl was with me. And I had my interview, I did my presentation, I did an amazing job, and they weren't impressed. And Cheryl was like, I disagree. How about you send them an email, try again tomorrow. They just didn't see it. So I spent that whole night, I was up all night, redid my presentation, redid everything, went back for a second interview, and they were like, we still can't see the vision. I end up telling Cheryl, and Cheryl's like, I believe in you. And Cheryl ends up creating this summer internship just with me to mentor me and help me just have space to think about the pieces of the chair at the very, very beginning. And so we spent, 12 weeks together? And
Yeah.
I ended up building a mock-up, ended up just really thinking through the pieces of the chair, and it took off from there. And so thank you for that.
Well, thank you for allowing me to be part of it. I always believe that when good things happen, it's because we co-create together. And so, I think people who champion others and mentor others and work with others do it because we feed each other in ways we need. So I got as much out of starting an incubator for Dreme, you, and I learned a lot. And I remember saying to you, I'm happy to start an incubator just for you, but you have to teach me because I actually don't know how to do an incubator. So we're going to learn together.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really a lot of fun, and I did learn a lot. And you actually helped me with the structure and helped me with the deliverables, which I wasn't 100% sure about. So this was clearly a relationship where we both got as much out of it. So thank you.
Cheryl, did you always know that you were going to be in social entrepreneurship?
No, I didn't know what social entrepreneurship was when I started. I went to undergraduate, and sociology and political science is where I focused. I spent a good part of my early life and career in politics and in government, and I really loved it. And then my graduate degree was in social work, community organizing, and social policy. So I really was a social worker wanting to create change through policy and through organizing. Fast forward, when I had the opportunity to go back to Boston College, where I did get my graduate degree, my strategy professor, Brad Googins, invited me to come and be the managing director of the Boston College Center for Corporate Citizenship. And I jumped at it because I loved working with him. And he was at that time running two centers, one on corporate citizenship, corporate social responsibility, and another one on work and life. And so these were really key societal issues that were weighty and meaty and exciting because it was really at the cutting edge at the beginning of these two movements, one the work-life movement and the other corporate social responsibility. So I didn't know that I would be doing social entrepreneurship and social innovation because I was actually doing corporate social responsibility. But when I was recruited by Len Schlesinger to come and start the Institute for Social Innovation, back then it was called the Lewis Institute for Social Innovation, that's when I learned about entrepreneurship. Until then, I don't even think I knew how to spell entrepreneurship. But I actually had, and I didn't understand the notion, but I had met many social entrepreneurs and social innovators throughout my life. I just didn't know it. But then I started a journey of really trying to understand and study and spend time with people who were changing systems and also social innovators who were creating usual and unusual relationships for better outcomes for business and society. So I've learned about it by doing it and learning inside of Babson.
So can you help me define what is corporate responsibility? What is that?
So corporate responsibility, and for anybody listening, there are lots of different words, but it might be helpful to start with what is it and why did it come about? So when I was in graduate school, companies, and in fact, the dean of the graduate school when I was there wrote a very good book, Ed Burke, Community Relations. And most U.S. companies had community relations people inside their businesses, particularly before the internet, before we were really big global businesses. Most businesses were in communities, what we call fence line communities. And so their license to operate was basically to not be unethical, to pay your employees, to pay attention to your to your shareholders, to your investors, to your suppliers and your employees. It was very, very simple. A license to operate is just don't do anything bad. And oh, by the way, when you have extra money, philanthropy, give back to the community. And so there would be what was called checkbook philanthropy. Businesses would just give to the community. They'd put ball lights up. They'd give to Little League teams. They'd give to charities in the community. Fast forward, the community relations person really became that intermediary between the business and communities and society. So if you fast forward to the time that I got there in the mid 90s, corporate social responsibility was the practice of companies really thinking about their responsibility in a few ways: employee engagement and volunteerism, philanthropy in the community, and responsible business practices. And that is corporate responsibility, whether you call it corporate social responsibility, whether you call it corporate citizenship. Today, people call it ESG, or some people just call it sustainability. The notion back then is that businesses having greater responsibility to society than they ever have before because the game has changed. So the role of business and society today, the stakes are much higher. Today, back in the day, you would never say that the environment is a stakeholder, because back in the 80s, people didn't talk about the environment as a stakeholder, but we should have, because today the environment is a stakeholder. Your communities are stakeholders. Education is a stakeholder, because a lot of these relationships either accelerate or decelerate the impact businesses can have in the world. So it's really the responsibility of companies to meet and hopefully exceed expectations by every one of their identified stakeholders beyond just shareholders.
So with your background in social work, sociology, and political science, how do you feel like that helped the conversations you were having to highlight corporate responsibility from the businesses that you were working with?
So I think it helped a lot, because one thing about being a social worker and going through a school of social work and understanding social policy is that, and the most important thing I learned in social work school is that relationships trump everything. Relationships matter, those connections matter, and being able to both synthesize and integrate and work with and through relationships is everything. And sometimes in a business school, we can be very transactional. You know, in business schools, there are disciplines. There are marketing, there's finance, there's accounting, there's organizational behavior, human resources. They are areas of expertise that business leaders need to know. But increasingly, what we need to spend time on is the relationships between and among ourselves. And so I really understood, and I would say more than just the School of Social Work, the most incredible influence in my life has been a community organizer, because community organizers understand that you can only work at the community level where the problems are. So I'm not the expert. The community and those who are experiencing the problems in the community know best. So my role is to, as facilitator and as integrator and organizer, people who actually know better than myself. And so I had a mentor named Jerry Sternin who created the notion of positive deviance. And he said, you can't think your way into a new way of acting. You must act your way into a new way of thinking. And the only way to act your way into a new way of thinking is to work with people who are already doing something, whether it's working or not. You have to start with people who are already trying to solve or address a community or societal issue. So for me, community organizing was the greatest practice that I learned, because it's also, now that I'm at Babson, it is very, very aligned to the entrepreneurial thought and action practice, which is what Babson's known for. That the whole entrepreneurial mindset is also very, very aligned with a community organizer's mindset, because you have to constantly act, learn, and build with what you know and have right in front of you.
Where we share stories in the chair.
Look, it's my commercial. We will be right back.
It's more than just a bad hair day. It's a journey. Finding the right hairstyle isn't easy, nor is finding the right stylist or the right products. Looking in every corner of the web gets messy, overwhelming, and exhausting. All the ads, the articles, the products, the videos, it shouldn't be this hard, but it is. And now, it isn't. The Chair. A black and brown centered platform where you can design hairboards, connect to hairstylists, and share hair care tips for a new, joyful path on your hair journey. Avoid the clutter, save yourself hours, months, and even years of research and poor trial and error. Everything you need and only what you need is in one place. Hairboards made by people like you, for you. Find the right products, the right people, the right answers for you, stress-free. Join the Chair community and make every day a great hair day. When you share your pain, you allow others to help you. And when you share your success, you help others get theirs. Lean on the chair. We got you. No stress, no strife. In the chair. The chair. The chair. All right.
Don't you feel though that sometimes that there's a disconnect between community organizing, like your beliefs in community organizing, and business practices itself? My time at Babson, there were beautiful moments where I got to meet people like you, where I felt like you saw my experiences. My background as an educator wasn't a hindrance, it wasn't a scare. However, in other business spaces that I was in, I felt like they were like, I don't understand you. I don't understand why you're here. And for me, that felt like I was having a conversation of my why. Instead of people just trying to understand my why, it was just a dismissive of my why. It didn't feel connected or related to other classmates of mine.
So I would say that why I find it, helpful and to understand the entrepreneurial mindset as opposed. So I separate entrepreneurial mindset from business mindset.
Okay.
Because in a world that's increasingly defined by uncertainty and in some cases unknowability, the managerial administrative mindset will take you only so far. And you've learned this. You learned this in your entrepreneurial thought and action classes. We can't look at the past to predict the future in today's world because we're living in an unpredictable, unknowable world. Let's just take COVID. Nobody could have predicted what would happen or how we would respond during COVID. We actually had to act, learn, and build our way through that because nobody knew. We were locked down. We were all on Zoom. Businesses that never thought about pivoting and creating hand sanitizers with the resources they had at hand did it. Mattress companies used their manufacturing to create things that were needed in the pandemic. So people, and I separate businesses that were entrepreneurial and knew how to respond to uncertainty and unknowability, who had an entrepreneurial framework and mindset, were the ones who really pushed things forward. Even take Pfizer. They always had a prescriptive way of how long it would take for a drug to come to market or what did we need. Well, they were able to accelerate that for us to get the vaccines that we got. So I would say there's a distinction between the entrepreneurial mindset and business mindset. I do think a lot of people in business are administrative and managerial. So a lot of the things that I talk about don't fall within a predictive administrative mindset and cannot actually be measured with the traditional ways that we're measuring, because a lot of it is non-financial metrics. It's really the things that need to be measured in different ways, not quantitatively, but possibly qualitatively. And again, the business mindset are tactics, and I think the business mindset is really good for solving complicated business economic challenges. But I think the entrepreneurial mindset is more aligned to solving complex issues. And those complex issues are the issues that we see in the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals: poverty, gender equality, climate, life below water. A lot of the UN global goals and the biggest societal dilemmas are great market opportunities for entrepreneurs to address because they're complex. And businesses are really good at complicated. And in today's world, sometimes it has to go beyond just what you know in marketing, supply chain, and accounting and finance, and be entrepreneurial about how you look at the dilemmas that you're facing as a business, as a for-profit, not-for-profit, a movement, whatever it might be.
Yeah, I like that separation. I think that's helpful, at least for me, when I think about business and when separating business and entrepreneurship. That thought process is interesting because in my undergrad, my senior year, I took a class called The History of Capitalism.
Yeah.
And then I end up entering into business school, and my professor from college, Dr. Holly Swires, they said, hey, business school is the practicum of our course. It was like a nice explosion of this makes sense. The things that we learned about, Adam Smith and the invisible hand and all these things. And I was like, yes, I see those in business school. I see them in how we talk about business. However, thinking about it from the entrepreneurial mindset, like I'll always think about the argument I had. It was in one of our courses, and they were talking about Walmart, right? Walmart is talked a lot about in business classes because they're a big company, millions and millions and millions of dollars and all the things, right? They also are innovative in tech. And so Walmart comes up all the time. And they are praising Walmart for all their economic growth, how many stores they have. And then I'm in the background and I'm yelling like, hey, every time you build a Walmart, you're building a food desert. Hey, they don't give a full insurance to all their employees. Hey, that there's disparity here. And so now I'm arguing with my classmates and they're like, no, Walmart's great. And I'm like, Walmart isn't great. And so we're having this back and forth. But thinking about it from the business mindset versus the entrepreneurial mindset, I think that is a different way of approaching a problem. Just because you're saying they're great doesn't negate the fact that I don't think they're not great. And here are all the ways I'm expressing that. Here is how we are complexifying your business mindset by saying, hey, we are not caring enough about the people, right? But then in that same breath, a classmate was like, there's a difference between people and customers. And I was like, what? So for like my brain at that time was on fire the majority of the time because I was angry, because I was like, how can we not be seeing the same conversation? We are talking past each other, but being able to separate it in that way, the way that you're talking about is a different way of thinking.
Well, it's the difference between, and my mentor used to always say, are we living in a society or are we living in an economy? And I would think increasingly it's hard to separate the two. So again, I think there's a lot of ambiguity and it makes it confusing because on the other side of it, what's interesting to me, again, that Walmart is really good at scale. So when new entrants into the market came about, like organic food and things labeled organic, Walmart had the ability to buy and distribute it to people that wouldn't have had access to it at a different price. They were one of the first companies to really, really jump on the sustainability wagon and created the sustainable living plan. So it's not a black and white. It's not a linear. There's a zigzagging along the way. There are some things that a scaled business can do well, and then there are things that a scaled business don't do well. And if you look at the system in itself, if you look at a systems thinking and systems approach, then you start to look at where in that system are things good, where are they not good, given that it's a business and a business model. That is one business model. But to your point, there are good things about it and there are not good things about it. If we look at the cost of goods for the most amount of people, I think that they could check off a certain box. But if we look at the amount of stuff that's being manufactured that doesn't get recycled and doesn't get upcycled, it's a disaster. So I think I've gotten, and again, maybe it's because I've lived on the planet a long time. I've been around a while. My feeling is not every company is perfect. They are all making efforts, but I think all these new, interesting entrepreneurial and brave and courageous efforts to address some of the dilemmas we have are small wins. And then my thinking with my students is, how do we take those small wins, learn from it, and create businesses based on those small wins and scale those? So how do we scale a business that doesn't have the exact same model as Walmart and creating food deserts? And I think it's not just Walmart. It's, if I look at somebody like Jeffrey Brown, who is a Babson alum, fourth generation grocer. We've given him an award here. We gave him an award before your time at Babson, but he went back to Philly and he created the first, I believe, the first profitable supermarket in a food desert. He was recognized by Michelle and Barack Obama at his first State of the Union. He sat with Michelle. They went to visit his supermarket. He used community relations and organizing to build a profitable supermarket, and it's extraordinary, Dreme. If you get to Philly, you must meet him and go there. It's a religious experience. You go into his supermarket, and it is unbelievable. And what's unbelievable is that the community met several years into his being there and said, a third of our population where this is surrounding your supermarket can't buy from your supermarket because they're formerly incarcerated, they're returning citizens, and they don't have any jobs. So he created a university to train people in the grocery industry who are returning citizens. And now he's got formerly incarcerated folks running his cheese department, managing his businesses. So he really is breaking the mold, and he's a huge store. He's not a small mom and pop. He's got a few stores, but his why, going back to how we started this, his why for being in business is to solve problems, not to line his pockets.
Oh, and if you're interested to learn more about my experiences as a Black woman and educator in Guangzhou, China, I wrote my first ebook titled Nowhere and Everywhere, Captured Emotions of a Beautifully Broken Love Story. It is on lulu.com. Take a read and see some beautiful photography of mine. Enjoy the rest of the show. We were in a class, and I think this is when it clicked for me, my understanding of business school and education. The reason I came to business school was to study racism. I tell people that's what I wrote in my application. That's what I meant. Like, I wanted to understand what racism looked like from the perspective of business, right? I was in schools. I was surrounded by a bunch of white MBAs who were in charge, who didn't have any education experiences, and they were making decisions that I felt were not culturally responsive, were not student-centered, and everybody had an MBA. So I was like, clearly, I need to learn something. So I'm going to business school with that question at the top of my mind in every class. And when we were learning about growth and scale, I was like, oh, this is what this is. Like, I didn't understand this framework. And the thing I thought about was charter schools, right? Educators have a lot of feelings, depending on who you're talking to, about charter schools, and especially the rapid growth of them. My thought is, hey, if you have a charter school with 200 kids, my goal is to make sure that every kid is getting the type of education that you would want. Like, the whole point of a charter school at the beginning was providing another free option to public school, but still being able to really maximize that education. And then it got into specializations and specifics, right? But then they started rapidly growing, but the education wasn't getting any better. But in a business context, what I learned is growth shows that you're doing well. So the more stores you have, the more profit you get, the better you are. And so if a business person is taking that same idea with charter schools and making more and more charter schools, and they're like, oh, we're doing great. But then all the teachers are like, yo, this charter school is not better than the school around the corner. Stop making more of them, because the teacher is like, hey, the kids are not learning. For me, I'm like, yes, as an educator, that is what we're focused on. But as a business person, you're focused on, hey, we have 5 of these, we're doing a great job. While the educator's like, well, this one is fine, but their education needs to be at a 10, and right now you have them at a 5. And if you make 5 of these, now you've gone from a 5 to a 2. And teachers are like, this isn't worth it. But the business person is like, no, this is absolutely worth it, because now we have more of them. And so for me, like, when I learned that concept, my brain felt so much better. I was like, oh, we're completely misunderstanding each other. Like, hey, This is why I came to business school, because I need to have this conversation with every business person and every educator in the room when we're together, you know?
Yeah.
My brain was, okay, I get it. Our frameworks are misaligned, and this is how racism is embedded in these systems. This is how we are missing the value, the definition of value. I didn't know was a different definition until I came to business school. Profit is valued. When you think about relationships aren't necessarily valued. But when I met you, I knew right away that our relationship is valued. And so that's why when you helping me out at the beginning of my entrepreneur career, really thinking about trying to flush out the chair, you saw the relationship in me. And the program that denied me, oh, I don't see the problem. We already talked to somebody who had a similar idea as yours and it didn't work out, so yours is not going to work out. You don't have enough stats for me. And I was like, no. And you were like, no, I see it. I see you and I see your passion and I see how you keep asking all these questions. And you told me, hey, I don't really understand the nitty gritty of black hair. I don't really understand the problem right now, but you do, and you constantly keep highlighting it. I think that for me, the conversation of value in business school helped my brain be able to understand this is why you came here. This is what you needed to learn.
Well, I love what you just said, because you actually demonstrate that when you don't build relationships first, I've had this conversation before, that one of the things I teach as part of our practice is that people at any given time are having one of four conversations. They're having a conversation for relationship, a conversation for possibilities, a conversation for action, and a conversation for reflection. And if people start with a conversation for possibility and action without relationship, you leave so much on the table. Much of what you need to know is invisible to you. And if you start with the relationship, you open the aperture to possibility and action. Because I can tell you that years ago, when I was at at Boston College, we used to have lots of conversations for possibility and action. And a lot of them didn't come to fruition, and they didn't because we didn't have a relationship with those people. So, I could brainstorm with the best of them, and I could come up with an action plan with the best of them. But if you don't have the essence and foundation and value of the relationship, you might be doing something good with the wrong people. And I can't tell you how many times I've gone into partnership with people before I fundamentally built a strong relationship. And when you do that, and I say this all the time, the aperture does open. And I can't tell you, when I talk to people who are trying to raise money in the not-for-profit world, I always say to them, start with your why. Start with your story of self. Why are you here? And that's what I do at Babson. When people say to me, and I'm trying to raise money for the Institute, I don't say the Institute does this, it's at Babson College. What I do is I say, hey, this is who I am. I was an activist, I did this, and I happen to find myself at a business school right now because I really believe that social innovation is one of the most important attributes and qualities of a good business person, because all social innovation is co-creating with both usual and unusual suspects in service to better outcomes for business and society. Well, that's good for a social enterprise. That's good for a social entrepreneur. That's good for a for-profit enterprise. It's good for a B Corp. It doesn't really matter. When you are really good at the practice of social innovation, you're building the right relationships at the right time that are going to further your ability to create economic and social value together. That's all that is. And so when I go to sell the Institute, I'll say there's no better place than Babson to be right now, because these are important qualities and practices of anybody that wants to raise money for the things they want to do. And it is about the relationships. I mean, really, I sort of always feel like I want to say it's the relationship stupid, but it is. It really is. If you look at all the things that are enduring, I mean, the reason why you and I will have a lifelong relationship is because we're in a relationship. And I always care, and I'm invested in how you're doing. And I feel the same from you. I mean, I grow with you, and a good relationship is one that grows, one that has each other's back and is supportive and is constantly in a co-creative process. That to me is fundamentally a life source of energy, and that energizes me. If that's why I do what I do. That's my why.
Well, Cheryl, thank you so much for sitting in the chair and sharing your stories with me. I truly, truly appreciate
I
it.
love being in your chair. I love being in your chair. And thank you for including me and inviting me. And I'm really honored. So thank you very much.
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story.
Thank you for listening to an episode of The Chair. I, of course, would love your continued support. Let me know what you think of this episode by doing all the things. Subscribe, comment, and come back next week, every week. Enjoy the rest of your beautiful day. Or if you are like me, enjoy that moonlight and that one star under all your city lights. Love you. Talk to you later.
The chair.
How long I gotta wait for a press record?
Go.
We support her. Shit.
Do your...
Welcome to the chair, where Miss Dreme always has a story. Where we share